The Icelandic Black-tailed Godwit breeds in Iceland. It's a handsome bird in its breeding plumage, rusty red, and that black and white wing and tail pattern. They're very noisy birds, very characteristic of the Icelandic landscape during the summer months. And here are the young, which hatch out in late June and early July. Once they're finished breeding, they head south for Europe. And will spend the winter on the estuaries of the western edge of Europe. Where they will feed on the mud flats and on the wet grasslands. Up until very recently, very little was known about the detailed movements and behaviour of the black-tailed godwit. But in the 1990s, a small group of dedicated amateurs and professionals got together to try and find out more. Thomas Gunnarsson is an Icelandic ornithologist who spends his summers studying the black-tailed godwits on their breeding grounds in Iceland. One method of catching them is when the eggs are found, he places what's called a walk-in trap over the nest. Carefully positions it, and then he retreats to a safe distance. Thomas waits in the jeep for the adult to return to the nest. Once Thomas sees her back on the nest, he rushes from the car. The bird cannot find its way out of the trap before Thomas arrives to catch it. You can see the bird is jumping about, but it doesn't come to any harm, as Thomas is a trained ringer.
I didn't see the bird.
He has it. And knows how to handle the birds without causing them too much distress. And once he has the bird safely in a bag, he retreats to the car with the trap.
Here it is. Beauty. Famous black-tail. Okay, if you tilt it a bit and spread it.
Yes.
checking for fault bars. And sometimes if I've got a distorted growth at some
Yes.
period, they get bars in there.
In late June and early July, the chicks hatch, and Thomas is out again looking for the nests, but this time they're very well covered in the long vegetation, and he's got to be careful that he doesn't stand on them. And he gets help from people like Buddy and Saivar, who give him directions. It looks like he's trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the adults are never too far away from the nest, and often they're a good giveaway. Once the adult has returned to the nest that they found, Thomas is out of the traps and across the field, trying to get there as quickly as he can. Godwits stay very tight on the nest. There goes the adult, so you can get quite close. And all he's got to do then is find exactly where. There he is, he's found one.
Okay, hatching nest.
And this is what he's found. 3 Godwit chicks, only hatched a day or two, but at this stage old enough to ring. As much information as possible is gathered from the chicks. Measurements of the head,
34.9.
it's all very important because it helps them to gauge from year to year how well the Godwits are doing. The parents are never very far away and they're very noisy. And the metal ring doesn't hurt the bird, or it's
No, it doesn't. It's only a small part of its weight, and it doesn't feel it at all. It just sits gently on the leg. It's quite, can move freely on it. And we need to know how heavy it is. That both gives us an idea about how old it is and what kind of condition it is in. No, 76 grams. 76 grams. 100 grams more and it'll be flying. They're about 25 grams when they hatch. Now we'll put some colorings on. Each bird gets an individual combination of colorings. So we don't need to catch it again. We can see these rings from a distance with a telescope or binoculars. Whereas if it's only metal ringed, we need to catch the bird again to read the ring if we want to know where it's been ringed. But in this case we can just look at the colorings from a distance. Has pooped on me, which is very nice because we can get a sample of poop. We can count parasite eggs in the poop and see how infected it is with parasites.
Is it common for them to be infected?
All wildlife has parasites,
Yeah.
basically. And humans would too if they didn't have such good medication.
Can I just get that? Okay. And what are you doing there now?
We're putting it in kalium dichromate, which is a fluid which is good to store these things in. And this is these tubes have been weighed, so we can weigh them again and see how heavy the poop was we put in it, and then we can count the parasite eggs, and we can know how many parasite eggs there are in per unit volume of Godwit poo.
And one little technique that Thomas uses at the very end of this breeding season is to try and catch the adults on the nest when they have chicks. They stay very close, just like when they have the eggs, and he creeps up with a net, a drop net, and he will try to catch the adult on the net. It takes a lot of skill and patience, and I'm afraid not always successful. But he persists and has caught quite a number of birds in this way. Again, oh, well, better luck tomorrow. Ruth Croger is a very active member of the Farlington Ringing Group.
Sorry?
I was talking to...
She is the person responsible for making the colourings for the Godwit project.
So I cut off, right, and the hot water softens it enough.
Can we have a thumbs up and a 1, 2, 3? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hooray! Alright, back to work.
Unfortunately, the Godwits that come here never go to Ireland, or is it fortunate for those Godwits? I'm not sure.
Still recording it.
Is the Icelandic adult scheme. So all the adult birds we caught in Iceland have a lime ring on the lower right. So anybody seeing it and reporting it, that bird, the information comes to us, and it's from this project. These Godwits are living, certainly the ones wintering in the south coast, have got an annual survival rate of over 90%. It's less than 10% of the population die each year.
Yeah.
And they've all been like that.
They've all been like that. I'm not actually expecting anything else, but if you don't check, you don't get.
Total hit. 139.
Oh,
come on.
Wonderful.
Look at this. Aren't they?
Anything more cute than this?
And this one's just looking around all over the place.
Pete travels all over Europe with a small group of watchers looking for the colouring birds that they've ringed in Iceland and in Britain. Here they are in Portugal, and it involves scanning through the many thousands of wading birds looking for Godwits, and then seeing if any of them have characteristic colourings. And sure enough, they find them. This one here has been in the same piece of mud for the last few years, every year. Here are the Godwits mixing with very exotic looking flamingos in the Tagus estuary. And here's an avocet, 2 avocets, beautiful with their upturned beak, birds that we get in Britain, not in Ireland usually. Here's another one at another location. They have all the details of where they were seen last and where they were ringed, but they have to go out into the field to gather the data. And not a too unpleasant an activity actually, because it can be good fun and it brings you to some lovely places and to see lots of magnificent wetland birds. Taking down data is very important on these trips, and Pete is seen here using a GPS to pinpoint the location of a flock of Godwits that they're after finding. This one is a roost site. This is where birds would roost at high tide. He draws it on a map, marks the point, records the date and time, and how many birds were there.
This is a good roost site where we saw birds from Clonakilty just a few days ago.
When Pete is in places like Portugal, he likes to take time to talk to other people, such as João Ministro here, who works for the Portuguese government, who is trying to restore the salinas where they used to get salt, and not so much in use anymore. Very valuable places for wetland birds like the godwit, and also very beautiful. And of course, on such trips, you may be lucky to see a bird like a marsh harrier, very much at home in this habitat. Here the godwits are with redshanks, which may be also from Iceland. It's amazing to see the long legs of the flamingos right next to the godwits. We're very reluctant to move, by the way. This bird is tucking its leg, and now it's tucked its beak to go back to sleep. Flamingos, grey heron preening, godwits also there. And right until dusk, godwits are feeding along the edge of the mud. Peter also takes time out to do a bit of ringing with staff and students of Lisbon University. Here they are discussing the moult of a redshank, which has a Dutch ring on it. They will find out where this bird was ringed by returning the information to the person who ringed it. One of the group is David Santos, and his special interest is in studying the feeding habits of the wetland birds at night. He has found that many birds continue to feed throughout the night. Here an avocet is sifting for small creatures in the mud. These are dunlin, and sure enough, he's also seen black-tailed godwits feeding at night. So we may think that they all roost and sleep for the night, but in fact, most waders will continue to feed through the night to some degree. All this activity, running around, trying to find godwits, can take its toll, and even people like Pete have to take a nap now and again. After a long day in the field, looking at many thousands of birds, all the data is entered on the database. This is very important, because it's only by putting all the information together that we can build up a very clear picture of what's going on. Everybody takes part, the whole team are there, and Pete enters the data, double checking that it's in correctly. They come across godwits that they have ringed in Iceland, godwits that they've seen in other countries such as Ireland or Britain or France, and they actually get to know some of the individual birds who've been returning to the same places every year following their breeding in Iceland. Oh! In Clonakilty Bay in Ireland, Leslie Lewis has been studying the feeding habits of the black-tailed godwit. It's a very important study because without this information we don't know exactly what the feeding requirements of the black-tailed godwits are. And the one way to find out what they're feeding on is by getting your hands dirty, and that's exactly what Leslie does. She goes down onto the mud flats.
There is, yeah.
And opens up the mud where she has seen the godwits feeding and has a look at what sort of creatures are living there. She also takes core samples of the mud, and this involves using a pipe to extract a section of the mud. This can be quite difficult, especially where the mud is very sticky. She then takes the samples, puts them in a sieve, and literally sifts away all the silt. Two examples of typical prey items of black-tailed godwit. The bivalves, that's the clams on the right, and also worms such as the ragworm, which are seen on the left. There are other smaller creatures there too. And then it's back to record the data and write up the work.
Finally, we catch one. A very expensive godwit, this one. 2 trips to Ireland and here he is. Characteristic Icelandic bands just going on. I mean Irish bands, what the hell am I talking about? These stripe rings are first time they've been used on godwits, and they're going to be an Irish scheme. So hopefully in the future we might ring a few more. So there we go. Individually identifiable by the colours here and opposite the coloured bands. And this is an adult bird from last year. Okay, it's still finishing its primary molt. It's got 3 old feathers there. It's just replacing these outer primaries. It's almost finished. I'm sure it's a male. It's a nice small bird. Short bill. Now it's going to be released.